defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
They are taking no chances on Capitol Hill. Today, democracy is a fortress. Inside, the president's opponents are about to begin a second impeachment of Donald J. Trump.
Trump is absolutely freezing right now as the Senate Judiciary Committee just exploded into complete chaos. Democrats walking out, empty chairs, Republicans steamrolling votes anyway. This is a constitutional crisis playing out in real time. Chairman Chuck Grassley, 91 years old, been in the Senate since the dinosaurs, suddenly decides he's done with debate, just cuts it off, calls for votes, and the Democrats, they lose it, completely lose it. Senator Cory Booker stands up and starts yelling at Grassley, "What are you afraid of? This is unjust. This erodes the integrity of this committee." And then he walks out, just leaves, and every single Democrat follows him, all of them. Empty chairs on one side of the committee room, Republicans sitting there looking smug, and Grassley, he just keeps going, keeps calling votes, advances the nominees anyway, despite the walkout, despite the protest, despite the fact that there might not even be a quorum, the minimum number of senators needed to conduct business. This is unprecedented, and this is exactly the kind of power move that defines Trump's second term, because the nominees they were voting on, they're not just any judges. One of them is Emil Bove, Trump's personal defense lawyer, the guy who defended Trump in his criminal trials, and now Trump wants to put him on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, one of the most powerful courts in America, for life. The other nominee, Jeanine Pirro, yeah, that Jeanine Pirro, the Fox News host who screams about law and order every night, who got suspended for spreading conspiracy theories, who's been Trump's biggest cheerleader for years, and Trump wants to make her a federal judge too, for life, with the power to shape American law for decades. But real quick, before we get into this, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built John Brown's show, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, please subscribe, because you might think you are but aren't. Your subscription actually matters here. All right, let's get into what actually happened. The Democrats are saying this is a complete violation of Senate rules, that Grassley abruptly ended debate without warning, that he's rushing these nominations through without proper vetting, without giving them time to question these nominees about their qualifications, their backgrounds, their potential conflicts of interest. And when they protested, when they tried to slow things down, Grassley just steamrolled them, cut off debate, called votes, and when they walked out to deny quorum, to prevent the committee from having enough members to legally conduct business, Republicans just ignored it, kept voting anyway. This is a constitutional crisis playing out in real time, because Senate rules exist for a reason, procedures exist for a reason. The whole point is to ensure that lifetime judicial appointments get proper scrutiny, that we don't just rubber stamp whoever the president wants, that there are checks and balances. But those rules apparently don't matter anymore, at least not when Republicans have the majority and Trump wants his people on the bench. And here's what makes this even more explosive. There's a whistleblower, an insider at the Justice Department, who came forward with allegations about Emil Bove. Allegations that while Bove was working at DOJ during Trump's second term, he allegedly suggested that the department should ignore court orders, specifically court injunctions blocking Trump's mass deportation plans under the Alien Enemies Act. The whistleblower claims Bove was pushing DOJ lawyers to defy federal judges, to just ignore court orders and proceed with deportations anyway. Think about that for a second. Trump wants to put a guy on the federal bench, give him lifetime tenure, who allegedly told Justice Department lawyers to ignore court orders, to defy other federal judges. That's not just controversial, that's a direct attack on the rule of law, on the entire concept of judicial independence. And Senate Democrats wanted to ask Bove about these allegations, wanted to question him under oath, wanted to get answers before voting him onto one of the most powerful courts in America. But Grassley wouldn't let them, cut off debate, rushed the vote, and when Democrats walked out in protest, Republicans just kept going. This isn't normal. This isn't how the Senate is supposed to work, and it's part of a larger pattern we're seeing in Trump's second term, the systematic dismantling of institutional norms, the erosion of checks and balances, the consolidation of power in ways that would make the founders absolutely furious. So let's talk about who these people are, because that's the key to understanding why Democrats were so furious, why they walked out, and why this whole situation is so dangerous for American democracy? First, Emil Bove. Most Americans have never heard of him, but if you followed Trump's criminal trials, you know exactly who he is. Bove was one of Trump's defense lawyers in multiple cases. He represented Trump in the Manhattan hush money trial, the classified documents case, the January 6th cases. This guy has been Trump's legal bulldog for years, and he's good at it, smart lawyer, aggressive, willing to push boundaries, willing to make arguments that other lawyers wouldn't touch. And Trump loves him for it, absolutely loves him. But here's the thing, before Bove was Trump's personal lawyer, he worked at the Justice Department. He was a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, one of the most prestigious prosecutor offices in the country. He worked on major cases, built a reputation. And then when Trump won re-election, Bove rejoined DOJ in a high-level position, Deputy Attorney General or something close to it, and that's when things got messy, really messy. Because according to this whistleblower, a career DOJ official who came forward, Bove allegedly pushed lawyers at the Justice Department to ignore court orders, specifically injunctions that federal judges had issued blocking Trump's deportation plans under the Alien Enemies Act. Now, the Alien Enemies Act is this ancient law from 1798 that Trump has been trying to use to deport people en masse without normal due process. It's supposed to be for wartime situations, for deporting nationals of countries we're at war with. But Trump's been trying to stretch it, expand it, use it as a tool for his immigration crackdown, and federal judges, both liberal and conservative judges, have been issuing injunctions saying, hold up, you can't do this, this violates due process, this violates constitutional rights, you need to follow normal procedures. And according to the whistleblower, Bove's response was basically ignore them, just proceed with the deportations, defy the court orders, because the president's authority supersedes judicial interference. Think about what that means. And if that's true, if Bove really was pushing DOJ lawyers to defy federal court orders, that's absolutely disqualifying for a judicial nominee, because judges are supposed to respect the rule of law. They're supposed to believe in judicial authority, not undermine it, not suggest that executive branch officials should just ignore court orders they don't like. Democrats wanted to question Bove about these allegations, wanted to put him under oath and ask, did you really tell DOJ lawyers to ignore federal judges? Do you believe the executive branch can defy court orders? What's your view on judicial supremacy and the separation of powers? These are basic, essential questions for anyone being considered for a lifetime appointment to the federal bench, but Grassley wouldn't let them ask, cut off debate before Democrats could dig into these allegations, and that's why they were furious. Make sure you're subscribed to John Brown's show because, and there's also this other issue with Bove. Over 900 former Justice Department officials, career prosecutors, people who served under both Democratic and Republican administrations, signed a letter opposing Bove's nomination. 900 people, that's unprecedented. These aren't political hacks. These are serious lawyers who've dedicated their careers to the Justice Department, and they're saying Bove is unqualified, that his actions at DOJ were inappropriate, that he was involved in controversial decisions like firing the January 6th prosecutors, like dropping charges against Eric Adams, the New York City mayor who's been accused of corruption but who became a Trump ally, like politicizing the Justice Department in ways that violate long-standing norms. These 900 former DOJ officials are saying this guy shouldn't be on the federal bench. He's compromised, he's too political, he's too loyal to Trump. And Democrats wanted to explore these concerns, wanted to hear from these former prosecutors, wanted to understand what Bove really did at DOJ, but again, Grassley shut it down, no time for that, we're voting now. And then there's Jeanine Pirro. Oh man, Jeanine Pirro, where do we even start? Pirro is a former prosecutor and judge from New York. She had a legitimate legal career decades ago, but then she became a Fox News host. And over the years, she's become one of Trump's most vocal supporters. She's promoted election fraud conspiracies. She's attacked Trump's critics viciously. She got suspended from Fox News multiple times for spreading misinformation. And now Trump wants to make her a federal judge, wants to give her lifetime tenure to decide cases that will affect millions of Americans. Democrats see this as a complete joke, as Trump rewarding a loyal media ally with a judicial appointment. And they wanted to question Pirro about her inflammatory statements, her conspiracy theories, her lack of recent legal experience, her obvious bias in favor of Trump. But Grassley wouldn't allow sufficient time for questioning, just rushed the vote. So now we understand who these nominees are: a Trump defense lawyer with whistleblower allegations against him, and a Fox News host who's been Trump's cheerleader for years. Not exactly the kind of impartial, independent judges you'd want on the federal bench. And that brings us to what actually happened in the committee meeting. The Senate Judiciary Committee was scheduled to meet and vote on several Trump judicial nominees. Standard procedure is there's debate, senators ask questions, they discuss concerns, they request additional information, and then eventually they vote. But Grassley, he decided to speed things up, way up. Democrats barely got to speak, barely got to raise their concerns, and then suddenly, without warning, Grassley ended debate, just cut it off, called for votes, and Democrats were blindsided. Cory Booker was the first to react. He's usually pretty calm, pretty measured, but he stood up and started yelling, not in an unhinged way, in a passionate, I can't believe what I'm seeing way. He said, "This is unjust. This erodes the integrity of this committee. What are you afraid of? Why won't you let us ask questions? Why are you rushing this?" And Grassley just ignored him, kept calling votes, so Booker made a decision. He said, "I'm not participating in this. This is a violation of Senate rules. This is a mockery of the confirmation process." And he walked out, just got up and left. And then, like dominoes, every other Democrat followed one by one, empty chairs on the Democratic side, a unified protest against what they saw as a complete breakdown of Senate norms. Share this with everyone, because now here's where it gets legally interesting. Senate rules require a quorum to conduct business. A quorum is the minimum number of senators who need to be present for votes to be valid. For most committees, it's a majority of the committee. And when all the Democrats walked out, it's not clear whether Republicans still had a quorum. Democrats claimed they didn't, that without the Democratic members present, the committee couldn't legally proceed with votes. But Grassley didn't care. He just kept going, kept calling votes, and Republicans voted to advance Bove and Pirro to the full Senate despite the walkout, despite the quorum question, despite everything. And that's what made this moment so explosive, because Republicans were basically saying, we have the power and we're using it. Rules don't matter. Norms don't matter. We're confirming these judges no matter what you do. And Democrats were saying this is a constitutional crisis. This is how democracies die, when the majority party just ignores rules and norms and steamrolls the minority, when there's no debate, no scrutiny, no accountability, just raw power. Republican senators defended their actions by saying Democrats were being obstructionist, that they've been slow-walking Trump's nominees, that they're just throwing tantrums because they lost elections, that the walkout was childish and unserious. But Democrats countered, we're not being obstructionist, we're asking for basic due process, for time to vet nominees properly, for the chance to ask questions about serious allegations. That's not obstruction, that's our constitutional duty. And this is happening about 18 months into Trump's second term, and it's part of a pattern we've been seeing. Trump is moving aggressively to reshape the federal judiciary, to pack courts with loyalists, to ensure that when his policies get challenged, when federal judges have to decide whether Trump's actions are legal, the judges making those decisions are people who owe their careers to him, people who defended him, people who supported him on TV, people who might be inclined to rule in his favor. This is about more than just two judicial nominees. It's about the future of the federal judiciary, about whether courts will serve as an independent check on presidential power or whether they'll become an extension of Trump's political operation. And Democrats are terrified, absolutely terrified, because once these judges are confirmed, they're there for life, they can't be removed, they'll be making decisions for the next 30 or 40 years, long after Trump is gone. And if Trump successfully packs the courts with enough loyalists, it could fundamentally alter the balance of power in American government for generations. So let's break down why this matters, why you should care, and what happens next. Because this isn't just Washington drama, this affects you, your rights, your future. First, let's talk about why Senate norms matter, why procedures matter. A lot of people see Democrats walking out and think, oh, they're just being dramatic, they're throwing a fit because they lost. But that's not what this is about. Senate norms exist for a reason. The confirmation process exists for a reason, because lifetime judicial appointments are serious. These judges will have enormous power. They'll decide cases about your rights, your freedoms, your ability to sue corporations, to challenge government actions, to protect yourself from abuses of power. And the confirmation process is supposed to ensure that only qualified, impartial judges get these positions. It's supposed to be thorough. Senators are supposed to ask tough questions, review records, talk to former colleagues, investigate allegations. That's not obstruction. That's doing their job. It's their constitutional duty to provide advice and consent, not just rubber stamp whoever the president nominates. And when the majority party speeds through nominations without proper vetting, it undermines the entire system. It turns confirmations into a partisan exercise rather than a serious evaluation of qualifications. Second, let's connect this to Trump's broader judicial strategy, because this isn't an isolated incident. Trump has been systematically trying to reshape the federal judiciary since day one of his second term. He's nominating loyalists, people with clear political agendas, people who've defended him personally, people who've attacked his enemies on TV, and he's trying to push them through as fast as possible before midterms, before Democrats potentially take back the Senate. He wants to lock in a conservative judiciary that will be favorable to his policies for decades. And look, every president tries to nominate judges who share their judicial philosophy. That's normal, that's expected. Obama did it, Bush did it, Clinton did it. But what Trump's doing is different. He's not just nominating conservatives, he's nominating people with personal loyalty to him, people who've worked for him directly, people who might have conflicts of interest. When cases involving Trump come before them, that's not normal. That's not how it's supposed to work. Think about Emil Bove. He was Trump's defense lawyer. If Bove becomes a federal judge and a case involving Trump comes before the Third Circuit, can he really be impartial? Can he really set aside his personal relationship with Trump and rule based on law? Democrats don't think so. They think Bove will be in Trump's pocket. And that's dangerous because courts are supposed to be independent. They're supposed to be a check on presidential power, not an extension of it. Third, the immigration angle. Remember those whistleblower allegations about Bove telling DOJ lawyers to ignore court orders on deportations? That's directly tied to Trump's immigration agenda. Trump wants to deport millions of people. He wants to use aggressive tactics. He wants to bypass normal legal processes. And federal judges keep blocking him, keep issuing injunctions saying, no, you can't do this without due process. You can't violate constitutional rights. So Trump's strategy is pack the courts with judges who will rule in his favor, who will defer to presidential authority, who will give him maximum flexibility on immigration enforcement. And if he can get enough of those judges on the bench, he can overturn the injunctions. He can get favorable rulings. He can implement his deportation plans without judicial interference. That's the end game. That's what this is really about. And it's not just immigration, it's everything. Environmental regulations, labor rights, corporate accountability, voting rights, abortion, gun control, all of it. Every major policy debate in America eventually ends up in federal court, and whoever controls the courts, whoever has judges who share their ideology, has enormous power to shape American society. Trump understands this, Republicans understand this. That's why they're willing to break norms and rush confirmations, because controlling the judiciary is worth it. Fourth, the court packing concerns. Democrats are starting to use that term, court packing. They're saying Trump is packing the courts with loyalists, undermining judicial independence, turning courts into political tools, and Republicans are firing back. You guys wanted to expand the Supreme Court when you were upset about conservative justices. You're the ones who talked about court packing. How dare you accuse us of doing what you wanted to do? And there's some truth to both sides. Democrats did float the idea of adding justices to the Supreme Court. When Trump's appointees created a 6-3 conservative majority, they said it was necessary to rebalance the court. Republicans said it would destroy judicial legitimacy. And now the tables are turned. Republicans are pushing through controversial nominees, and Democrats are crying foul. It's all deeply political, deeply partisan, and it's destroying public trust in the judiciary. Because here's the thing, courts only work if people trust them, if people believe they'll get a fair hearing regardless of their politics. But when judges are seen as partisan operatives, when they're viewed as extensions of political parties rather than independent arbiters of law, that trust erodes. And once it's gone, it's almost impossible to get back. We're watching that happen in real time, and it's terrifying. Fifth, the 2026 midterm implications. This walkout happened about 16 months before the midterms, and Democrats are absolutely going to campaign on this. They're going to say, look what Republicans did. They violated Senate rules. They rushed through unqualified nominees. They're packing courts with Trump loyalists. They're destroying judicial independence. And if you want to stop them, you need to give us back the Senate majority. It's a powerful message, especially for voters who care about institutional norms, about checks and balances, about the rule of law. And there are a lot of those voters, independents, moderate Republicans, traditional conservatives who are uncomfortable with Trump's norm breaking. Democrats are betting that judicial fights will motivate these voters, that the walkout will crystallize concerns about Trump's authoritarianism, that it'll drive turnout. Republicans, on the other hand, are betting that their base doesn't care about norms, that their voters want judges who will deliver conservative rulings, that they'll be rewarded for packing the courts with conservatives. It's a calculation, a gamble, and we won't know who's right until the midterms. But either way, this walkout is going to be a campaign issue. Both sides are going to weaponize it, and it's going to shape how voters think about the judiciary and Trump's second term. So what happens next? Well, Bove and Pirro still need to be confirmed by the full Senate. The Judiciary Committee vote was just the first step. Now it goes to the Senate floor. And Democrats will fight. They'll give speeches. They'll demand recorded votes. They'll make Republicans go on the record supporting these controversial nominees. They'll try to peel off moderate Republicans, people like Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski, who sometimes break with their party on judicial nominations. But realistically, Republicans probably have the votes. If they stay united, they can confirm both Bove and Pirro, and once they're confirmed, they're on the bench for life, making decisions that will affect America for decades, and there's nothing Democrats can do about it. That's the reality of being in the minority. You can protest, you can walk out, you can give passionate speeches, but at the end of the day, the majority has the power. And that's what makes this moment so important, so scary, because we're watching institutional norms collapse in real time. We're watching the Senate, one of the world's greatest deliberative bodies, turn into a partisan battlefield where power matters more than rules, where loyalty matters more than qualifications, where short-term political victories matter more than long-term institutional health. This is how democracies decline, not with a bang, but with a series of norm violations that gradually erode the foundations of self-government. And whether you love Trump or hate him, whether you think these judges are great or terrible, we should all be concerned about the process, about what it means when the majority party can just ignore the minority, just rush through nominations without proper vetting, just break rules without consequences. Because today it's Republicans doing it to Democrats, but tomorrow it could be Democrats doing it to Republicans, and the precedent being set here that norms don't matter, that procedures are optional, that power is the only thing that counts, that precedent will outlast Trump, it'll outlast this Senate, it'll become the new normal. And once we've normalized this kind of behavior, there's no going back. If we don't start caring about institutions and norms and the rule of law, we're going to wake up one day and realize we've lost something precious, something irreplaceable, the ability to govern ourselves through democratic institutions that we all trust. That's what's at stake in moments like this. That's why this walkout matters. This story continues. Stay tuned.